reconfiguration specialist out of the Reynolds Company out of the Houston office. And we'll go ahead and get started today. Our today's tech talk is on automatic device configuration. Our presenter today is going to be Roger McClary out of our Waco office, one of my counterparts. And behind the scenes, myself, Mark McGinnis, Wainwell, and Brian McCusker will be in the background. So if you have any questions, feel free to type them out and we will answer them to the best of our ability. In the meantime, I will hand it off to Roger and let him get started.
Fantastic. Thanks, Mike. Hey, thank everybody for joining this presentation. I pray everybody's staying safe and healthy, and we'll get started.
Roger, let me jump in real quick. I need to make just an announcement. We are going to be recording.
Okay, yeah, forgot about that little tidbit. Yes, we are recording. So what we want to talk about today is ADC, or automatic device configuration. And to fully appreciate and understand ADC, we really have to talk about drives integration into Logix designer applications. You'll also hear it referred to as Premier integration or integrated architecture. It is a tool that exists within that facet. So what is Premier integration? Well, I can use one software tool to configure the entire Logix drive system. What does that mean? In other words, I can use my old drives tools, SP or Drive Explorer, or better yet, let's use Connected Components Workbench or Studio 5000. All these tools exist within the confines. So if I'm familiar with one, I can use the other one. Real important bullet is that third bullet down from the first paragraph, if you will. All drive configurations are saved in the Studio 5000 project file and in the Logix controller. So that's pretty paramount to Premier integration. What else does that give me? Also, when I create the AOP or add-on profile, it automatically generates descriptions for the tag names. So that eliminates the need to enter individual tag descriptions and also eliminates IO addressing mismatch errors. If you were familiar with the old block transfer days or DeviceNet days, we had the blob of data, and you were told to use the third word, which is actually word 2, because 0 is a number, and you had to count over so many bits and hope you chose the right one. Those days are gone with this AOP tag generation. So when I also automatically generate the tag, I also generate the respective tag data types. I don't have to concern myself. Is it a single integer? Is it a double integer? Is it just an integer? Is it a real? What is it? When I add the AOP, the tag data types are created properly for me. Also, very important is when I configure, that's important. I'm not programming, I'm actually configuring. When I configure the add-on profile, I'm configuring the controller and the drive network connections, and they are configured at the same time. And this is a subset feature, ADC, automatic device configuration, is a subset feature for our PowerFlex 750 family and the 520 family as well. So let's dig a little deeper into the ADC. It is a feature that has been available since version 20 of Logix controllers. And you can see here, it's basically their Logix systems to automatically download a large device configuration. Typically after it's been replaced, that's really when ADC does shine. And you see there, the configuration data for large devices resides in the ACD file and the Logix controller in both places, not just on your hard drive. It exists in the controller as well. But before version 20, that process was manual. So in other words, if you did have a drive failure, you would have to replace the drive, of course, and then you would use your Studio 5000, or back then our Logix 5000 software, and you would have to manually download the configuration file to the controller. With automatic device configuration, now that's all automatic. All automatic, especially, and I'll show you here in a little bit, if you're using where you see also complement Stratix 5700 and 5400 switches, we use those to automatically assign the IP address to the drive. I always get the question, do I have to use a managed switch for ADC to work? My answer to that truthfully is, no, you don't. But you will then have to manually, which is not hard at all, you will have to manually assign the IP address to the drive that you're replacing. I don't know about you, but it seems like, as you'll see in a little bit in the animation, these drives fail late at night or when everybody's in a hurry or crunch time. And trying to find the IP address of the drive you pulled out sometime can be interesting. So if I have the managed switch, and I'll show you how we set that up, it's very easy. It can assign the IP address to the failed device. Also, I'll point out, you can also have it not only download the IP address, the controller can also download the firmware to the drive if you so desire. And that's the firmware supervisor. And I'll show you how we set that up as well. You see here it flashes the drive and or peripherals if desired for the application. Say you're a pharmaceutical customer and you've had a drive replaced and you pulled it off the shelf. If your line is validated, you know you have to go back with the exact same firmware, and that's where firmware supervisor comes into play. So what is integrated architecture and what are add-on profiles? I've just opened up here a screenshot of a blank Studio 5000 project. I call this one Controller Tech Talks for today. And you see I've got controller tags highlighted, but there's absolutely nothing in the controller tags because I have nothing added. So I just kind of want to show you how this all plays in. You can see at the bottom under Ethernet, you see my processor, but you see nothing else. So I want to add a device, and this is the same for any IO card or anything else I want to add. In this case, we're going to add a drive. So I right-click on Ethernet, and I would select New Module, and when I did, it would bring up Select Module Types. Now, this screen would be extremely busy had I not filtered it, because when you select New Module, it's going to bring up every add-on profile for that processor that's supported for that processor and that firmware. I do get calls on occasion and say, hey, I don't see this card in my add-on profiles. And I say, what version of software are you running? And they'll tell me. I said, well, that version doesn't support that card. So it filters out those that aren't available. So I put PowerFlex in, and it was way too busy of a screen because there's a multitude of connections available for the PowerFlex. So I entered 525 because that's what I want to configure. So you see now I have down to 4 choices. So that's one 525 drive with 4 possible connections. Each connection has a separate AOP or add-on profile. Point out one thing. You see the first line there says PowerFlex 525 via 22COM-E. You can communicate to a 525 with the old legacy COM-E cards, but ADC is not available through that connection. So I've selected PowerFlex 525 via the embedded Ethernet. The reason I selected that is because that's how I'm connected. So you want to select how you're connected. Once I select that, then I'm presented with this device definition screen, and I have to fill out some blanks. If I don't know what I'm connected to, I don't really know the revision, I don't really know the amperage rating and such, I can, if I've assigned the IP address, I can click upload and RS Links will go out there and get the information for you. In this case, I happen to know what it is. So I give it a name. My name is My PowerFlex Drive. I know, really original, but you can name it pretty well whatever you want as long as it's within the naming convention of the Logix controller. So I named mine My PowerFlex Drive. Ethernet address. You are not assigning the IP address here, but what you are, you're telling the controller this is the address where your drive or device is going to be at. And you can see that I can set the revision level. Electronic keying comes into play because you have 3 choices: disable keying, compatible module by default, and exact match. If you select exact match, that's where firmware manager comes into play. It will download the firmware if you set exact match, if the firmware is different. If you select compatible module, ADC will only download the configuration file as well as disable keying as well. So I set my identity and the other information that I need. I apologize for this being blurry. That's just how I had to do a screen capture. If I have peripherals attached to my 525 device or drive, this is where I would set those up and configure it, okay? Connection format, spend a little bit of time here. Where you see mode, I can select velocity, position, torque mode. You basically set how you want the drive to be running. In this case, it's velocity, and that's by default. In most applications, velocity will serve you well. You see an input and output tab there. That's where I would configure the I'll put in quotations data links because the 525 they're different. But anyway, it's a data link for all intents and purposes. By default, we give you drive status. That word will tell you the drive is running, it's faulted, it's running forward, it's running reverse. Output frequency, because typically you want to know how fast the drive is running. Under the output tab, I don't have a screen capture on it, but under the output tab, that's where you would set up your start, stop, and you'd actually give it a frequency command. Those tags are given to you by default. Now, we always have customers, myself included, I want to know something else. Typically, I want to know what the DC bus voltage is. Being an old drives guy, DC bus voltage is kind of like when you go to the doctor, he's going to take your blood pressure because everything pretty well hinges off that blood pressure. It kind of tells you the health of the individual. For a drive, DC bus voltage pretty well tells you the health of the drive. You see, I have 3 additional blanks there. The 525 gives you 4 input and 4 output words. The 750 series gives you 16 and 16. Invariably, somebody asks, what if I need 17? The reason we don't give you 17, because if we gave you 17, you'd want 18 and so forth. But however, I do have one customer, they're using a whole lot more than 16. If that's the case, you just simply set up a message instruction, do a class instance attribute. The attribute is actually the parameter that you want to read. It's very easy to set up. So yes, you can get all the parameters you need. In this case, I've selected DC bus voltage. So here's where, now if you've ever been listening to one of these presentations live that I've done, I'll make 2 points. If you've ever heard me before, A, why are you listening again? Because it's the same thing. B, you always heard me say that, my dad was born in Missouri, and Missouri is the show me state, okay? And so we'll show you here in just a little bit what we're talking about. But I'll also go into a whole dissertation of how difficult it is to set up automatic device configuration. And of course, then I show them, we just simply click a checkbox and that's it. You've just now set up ADC. It's not real glamorous on the 525, but you'll see here in a little bit under the 750 series how important this actually becomes. Now, once you check that enable automatic device configuration, the other check marks are automatically filled in for you. You can uncheck those if you so desire, but those are the ones that get checked by default. So I've done all this, I click OK, and then all of a sudden now, I'm now looking at my PowerFlex 525 drive, and these are the tags that are created for you. They are automatically created. And if you, like I said, I mentioned before, if you come from the block transfer days, the device net days, and you had to get the exact bit to start and stop your drive, what we've done for you is you see right here, there's the name of my drive. I called it my PowerFlex drive. The AOP assigns it as an output, and they assign the word start. Not being facetious or a smart aleck, which I am, if I wanted to start the drive, which bit do you think I maybe want to turn to a 1? I would turn the start bit on. There's my stop bit. Also, I'll point out, when we asked it to create a tag for DC bus voltage, there it is, DC bus voltage. If we were online with the drive, we would actually see our DC bus voltage right there. It configured it as a decimal style and integer type, because that's what it needs. So that's the add-on profile that we've actually created. And once I've created it now, and I've double-clicked on my add-on profile, now I can actually go in and change a whole bunch of things. I can actually change my connections. I can change my parameters. All the parameters are available to me, and I can change every one of them right here, and I sometimes often do. What I typically do, now this, we don't have time to go into it today, it's another presentation, but under here, there's something called a startup wizard. And if all it does is you fill in the blanks. You answer a set of questions, but trust me, if you don't know the answers to these, the information it's asking, you can't start your drive up anyway. Once you're through with that, then you're ready to go. And now you can, it will show you in a little bit, you download the controller. You'll notice I have my controller set up for compatible module, and I have ADC enabled. It actually lets you know that, okay, ADC is enabled. And why is that important? I actually had a customer call me saying, I'm standing in front of my drive, looking at the HIM, and I'm making a change to the parameter, but the drive is not accepting it. It automatically goes back to the old setting. And I thought about it for a little bit, and I go, is this drive connected to a network that's connected to a controller? And he said, yes. I said, do you have ADC enabled? He said, yes. I said, then you're not going to be able to change it from the drive. You have to change it from the controller. So that kind of makes it a little bit of security. It locks down that drive, if you will, to prevent people from, maybe making changes they really shouldn't be making. So it's also kind of a security feature, ADC is. So I've got everything ready. I'm ready to download it. And you see here, Logix stores drives, configuration, and parameter settings. And now I'm ready to download to the drive and controller. We do both when we hit this download. So I click download and I see this screen. And you want to see this screen because what it's telling you is the controller is telling you, and Studio 5000 is telling you, there are differences between your project and the physical. Well, if you set up the configuration file properly, there better be differences. If not, you didn't make any changes. Okay, so you would say use project. Now, if you're going online with a drive that's existing, you might want to use physical, because if you click download on project, you're going to overwrite whatever settings in that drive, and this drive may be running properly, and you just kind of mess things up. Now, if you look over to the right, or the middle, really, the 755, it's a little more interesting because in it, you see there's the 755. That's the drive. Port 0, that's the drive. In this case, we've made the choice not to download the identity, but the parameters, the time, the peripherals. We're not downloading any parameters to the HIM because that is a device. We are downloading our parameters to the dual encoder card, to the 24-volt I/O card. And this port 13 is actually the native internal port of the 755 drive. And yes, I can configure it using Studio 5000. So once I get all that set and I like it, then I would click, as you see over here, the download button. At that point, it would download it and run. So that's ADC. Now, to take full advantage of the automatic device configuration, I really want to use my managed switch. In this case, I'm using the Stratix 5700. And now you see the splash screen, if you will, or the dashboard of the 5700. I literally entered the IP address of my Stratix switch. Notice I'm using Google Chrome. I could use the command line interface with the Cisco tool. I'm not real good and proficient at it. And to be honest with you, I've never had to use it. Everything I've needed to do, because I'm only doing layer 2, layer 3 stuff, I've always been able just to use Google Chrome. So I log into Google Chrome, or use Google Chrome, log into the switch, and this is the dashboard I see. It's active. When I took the screen capture, you see 2 greens. That means I had 2 devices plugged into it. These lights here were flashing, telling me everything is working. It's showing my switch utilization. So we want to configure something called DHCP. Don't let that scare you. Dynamic Host Control Protocol, no big deal. It's just DHCP. Because I want to configure these ports. I have 4 of these ports configured to give an IP address to the devices I plug in. How did I do that? I went to configure, I selected DHCP, and it brought up this. I have global settings now, and I have DHCP ports persistence. I have to set up something called a DHCP pool. All that means is we're setting up kind of rules for it, how to play. I've created one, so I would click edit if I wanted to, but in this case, you'd click add, and when you did, it would bring up this screen. Everything with an asterisk, I need to fill in something. I give it a name. I'm real original with my names. I call this one ADC, DHC Pool Network. Since my switch is at 1.17, my DHCP pool is going to be 1.0. Starting IP. I started mine at .1, probably shouldn't have done that because that's the default gateway and that's also the IP address of my router that I'm using. So I probably should have started that at 2. I didn't, but that's okay. So all this other stuff, just leave alone unless you want to change it. Not really any need to. If I had a DNS server, I would enter it here. If I had a domain server, I would enter it here. This is my ending IP address. Notice I stopped at 254 because 255 would be the broadcast ID, and I don't want to do that. And here's my subnet. Once you fill it in, you click OK. I would go over here now to the DHCP port persistence tab, and this is what it looks like. Here are my ports. I have 8 fast and 2 gigabit. I've set up 4. I would literally just click here. It brings up this ellipse, and it tells me I can select this IP range from .1 to .254. I wanted anything that plugs into port 1 to receive the IP address .10, and my drive happens to be in port 4, and I'm giving it the IP address .29. Once I like all that, I would just click save, and then we're done. I get a lot of comments, people saying, I don't want to use a managed switch because I don't know how to configure it or set it up. I actually had a salesman say I don't like selling them because my customers are intimidated by them. I'm going, can your customer land a plus wire on the plus terminal and a negative wire on the negative terminal and give it proper 24 volts? He goes, yes. I go, then he's just configured the managed switch. Out of the box, powered up, these switches will work. They'll communicate, and you really don't have to do a thing. You want to, but you don't have to. And this is just some of the tools you can do is DHCP port persistence, and it works well in the ADC realm. So let's talk about ADC and what it does. You see here I have my 3 drives, and they're running my motors, and life is good. Here I have my compact Logix controller. It could be a control Logix controller, anything running version 20 and beyond Logix. It does support this. I have my Stratix 5700 switch right here, managed switch. And so what we want to talk about is collaboration of 3 independent features. First of all, the switch, dynamic IP address assigned by port. I've shown you how we have done that. It automatically assigns IP addresses in the drive based on the connected port. Okay, so you have to be careful with that. Firmware supervisor automatically flashes the drive if an exact match is configured. If it's not, it does not send over the firmware. And here's the magic, ADC. Automatically downloads the drive configuration if ADC is enabled and there's a configuration mismatch. So what happens? Let's animate this just a little bit. We had a lightning strike, and they always happen at 2 a.m., never at, in the middle of the day on Monday. It's always Friday or Sunday morning at 2 a.m. Lightning strikes, the drive burned out. We remove the drive, and of course, we've done our due diligence, and we have spares, or we've noticed we didn't, and we contacted the rentals company, and they hot-shotted the drive over there, okay, and we replaced it. We replaced the drive, and now the first thing that's going to happen is our Stratix switch sitting right here is going to notice that it had a device plug into it. Out of the box, our drives are requesting an IP address, okay? So the switch sends over the IP address. It's now back to 101. Now, all of a sudden, the controller realizes I have a device, an authorized, authentic device at IP address 101, but it does a checksum, and it notices that there's a difference. It says, okay, I've set for exact match. This drive does not match my configuration file, so I'm going to send over the firmware. It does just that, sends over the firmware, and then it says, okay, you need not only firmware, you need parameters, and it sends over the configuration file, and the drive runs. It's literally just that easy. So, as I said before, my dad was born in Missouri. That's the show me state. So now I want to actually show you a hopefully live demo. And in it, we have our compact Logix L36 ERM. We have the Stratix 5700 managed switch, and we have a PowerFlex 525 drive. So let me kind of adjust some screens here real quick. And hopefully you are seeing a Studio 5000 project. And also hopefully on the right, you're seeing our controller sitting in the demo room here in Waco. Here is my Stratix 5700 switch. Here's my L36 ERM processor, and here, of course, is my drive. And to kind of show you that, we are working, with real stuff, I can actually start the drive, and you see the wheel here turning. And then, of course, we can actually stop the drive. Of course, there's nothing magic there. It's just manipulating bits. So what we want to do now is simulate a fault. I'm too lazy and cheap to actually have a drive sitting here ready. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to unplug this cable from the drive. And if you look down here where it says running, you'll see the drive fault like it should. The drive here will fault because it's lost communications. I'm going to reset this drive back to factory defaults, which is about as close to out of the box as I can get. And then we'll go from there. So, okay, we've unplugged our cable and our drive is faulted just like it should. And here we see a connection timeout error because that's we can't talk to our drive because it's no longer there. I'm going to hit the stop button, hit the escape key, go into the parameters, and change 53 to a value of 1, which resets our defaults. The drive faults exactly what should happen. I click stop to clear the fault. I click the start button just to show you we now have local control of the drive, which we should not when we're connected to a controller. I got control of the speed and everything. I'm gonna stop the drive. So let me kind of point out some things here because it happens pretty quick. When I plug in the cable here into this port, if you watch down here, you see it connecting. It's trying to connect and it can't. You'll see this go through a series of connecting, configuring, confirming, and then running. And it takes about 27 seconds. You're gonna see once I plug it in, you're gonna see over here, you can't really see it here, but the drive is gonna go into boot P because it's asking for its IP address. The switch will give it the IP address. The controller will realize it has a device, it is authenticated, but the checksum is different, so it knows the parameters are different, so it will then send over a set of parameter files. But before it does, it doesn't know what this drive really has in it other than the checksum is different. So it will reset this drive back to factory defaults, and you'll see the drive fault. The controller will then clear the fault and then send down its host list of parameters. So let's hope this works. It's worked 3 or 4 times this morning, but stuff doesn't work sometimes live. I plugged it in. It takes a while for everything to interrogate. Okay, there the drive faulted because now it's resetting its parameters. And you kind of look down here, you'll see this thing going to configuring to all kinds of stuff. And then we'll say a prayer and make sure it goes to say running. Connecting, running. And to show you, I no longer have local control of the drive because now our controller has control of the drive. And just to show you, we can now start the drive. Literally, it took me a whole lot longer to describe what was occurring than actually it took for ADC to take over. So the key components of automatic device configuration, of course, is a logic controller running version 20 or greater, a PowerFlex 750 or 520 series drive, and really to take full advantage of the ease of it, we really want a managed switch in this scheme. And by doing that, you see we can actually be up and running after a drive is faulted. It took less than 27 seconds that time to completely do it. So, Mike, I'll stop there. That's kind of really it. I wanted to see if there's any questions or clarifications we needed to run through. But other than that, that's automatic device configuration in a nutshell.
Roger, at this time, we don't have any questions, and I got to say you did a great job. Just before we sign off, are there any questions? If you do, please type them in. Well,
I
Roger,
either really did a good job or confused the thunder out of them. I think we just, I wouldn't say I did a good job. I wouldn't say they're confused. It's just that easy. You've heard the term simple as ABC. This is as simple as ADC.
We do have one question. How is the PowerFlex 755 handled with the safety module?
Wow, that is a great question. And I'll tell you right now, I have not been asked that question before. So if you'll capture who that is, I will make sure that we capture that answer because I don't know how the safety module, I'm going to go out on a limb and assume that if you check the safety module, because I've messed with the safety module, just never under ADC. I know it's a peripheral. So if I select the safety module, then whatever's in there is going to be downloaded. Because I know any module plugged into the slot of the 53 or the 55, you can select it as being participant or non-participant in the ADC download. I will confirm that and explain exactly how, but if you'll capture who that was, we will get that answer to them.
All right, Roger, I think that's going to be it.
Fantastic.
All right, thank you very much for attending. And this class class has been recorded, and we will have it posted to our website hopefully by tomorrow. With that, thank you for attending, and we will see you next time.
Thanks, guys.